Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be working on Lab 2, and in Lab 2, we're pretty much going to be looking at virtual machines. For us very familiar with AWS or Amazon, this is the equivalent for Amazon EC2. So in this lab, we're going to learn how to create a virtual machine in Azure. We're going to learn how to secure it with network security group. We're going to install a web server, and most importantly, we're going to test this live. So just to give you a brief walkthrough, I'm sure if you're very familiar with the cloud or familiar with virtual machine, you're going to agree with me that virtual machines are basically and still one of the most common services in the cloud. So, but let's give a quick real world example. So imagine we're working with a startup team, right? And then we need to quickly host a simple website or an API. So instead of us buying physical servers, what we could do is that we could spin up a virtual machine in Azure. We could install NGINX on it, and then we could host it right there, the website, right? So for me, I would say that virtual machines are still used to date for proof of concept. They're used for training environments, and of course, they're used for running legacy applications that are not yet containerized, right? And in the future, more of our labs are going to be talking more about containerization. So that's exactly what we're going to simulate in this lab with virtual machines. So let us have a walkthrough of our diagram right here, just to have a good understanding, or our architecture, just to have a good understanding of what we'll be working on. So on the left here, we have the client, which is you and I using a browser or an SSH client. And then to connect, we have two options. Of course, the first option is using Azure Bastion. So basically, Bastion lets you connect securely without exposing the virtual machine directly. And then our second option is going to be with the public IP address. That's why we have the HTTP connection here. So with the public IP address, what's going to happen is it's going to allow us to test our NGINX web server, like we mentioned earlier, from a browser. So yes, and then we have our virtual machine right here, which basically lives inside the virtual network and a subnet. And of course, our virtual machine has a managed disk attached to it, and that's basically for the purpose of storage. So when we get into the lab, you're going to see that we're going to have what we call the rules. We're going to set rules for inbound traffic. And what we're going to do is that all inbound traffic are going to be filtered by the network security group. But for our configuration, we're going to allow only port 22 for SSH and then port 80 for HTTP. Okay, so but for those of us very familiar with AWS, this is very similar to the Azure Virtual Machine, is very similar to EC2 instance with EBS volume. And then we have our security group as well. And then with the Azure Bastion is very similar to EC2 Instance Connect. So let's dive right in. And that's it. We were able to create, and then we tested our Azure Virtual Network. We were able to secure it with Network Security Group. We were able to connect it with Azure Bastion, as you have seen, and we hosted a simple NGINX web server. So basically, what I would like to tell you is that virtual machines may seem very, very basic, but they are the foundation for many real-world projects, right? If this video was very helpful to you, please do not forget to like, to subscribe, and to check the GitHub repository for all the resources. Thank you very much.